Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Best Year of Your Life Summit. I'm your co-host, Dr. Mike Sapiro, ordained Zen monk and clinical psychologist. And I'm here with Reggie Hubbard. He is the founder, chief serving officer of Active Peace, LLC. Through meditation, wisdom talks, sound healing, and spiritual guidance, he helps all walks of life find space, grace, and perspective to navigate life with more perspective, ease, and humor. His spiritual practice has helped him navigate complicated emotions and find deep, sustaining peace. Reggie's life's work sits at the intersection of building community, bringing balance to activists, nudging the wellness community toward being more engaged, concerned citizens, and less self-absorbed, and shifting the world toward higher love and more justice for all. Reggie, so glad to have you on the summit.
Happy to be here. Always love to be in support of this community.
I guess I would like to start with what's most alive for you today? What's really driving the work you're doing?
I'm blessed in that I have found yogic and dharmic practices to help me process life as an experience. You know, I was an existential philosophy major in college, went to Yale, first generation, so I kind of jumped way into the deep end at 17 years old without necessarily the requisite scaffolding to manage such a descent, right? Because sometimes if you take a rapid descent, you're like, yo, where's the top, right? So luckily I've been able to navigate my way from the abyss back to the top. And I see all things in life as teachers, whether they be pleasant or unpleasant. Because as we know, things that you like may not be good for you. Things that you hate may not be bad for you, right? Mm. So blessing on that wisdom. Man, I got a stroke 6 months ago. Mm. And am neurologically impaired in my left leg. Was paralyzed, was in a wheelchair, my entire world changed like that. At 4 a.m. on April 1st. And through practice and grace and grit and blessing, honestly, I am now fully functional. I have functional mobility again. That wasn't a guarantee. In fact, doctors came in and were like, we don't know. And I had to be like, peace and blessing. Like, I don't need I need your diagnosis, not your prescription. So what I mean is, tell me what my blood pressure needs to be. Tell me what my blood sugar needs to be. I am a healer. I'll create the conditions for my healing. Mm-hmm. You telling me what's possible means nothing to me because I'm connected to the infinite. And if it's ordained that I walk again, it'll walk again, not because you say it can't. So I've been walking in that level of faith for 6 months. I've been reborn. And to some extent, I feel like a bit of an alien because the stressors that many people are parading these days, I'm like, yeah, great. Okay. I had to learn how to walk again. I almost died. Right? So not to diminish another person's perspective, but what's alive for me now is the space that I now have from being at death's door, I locked eyes with the Grim Reaper. And luckily, again, I then had the scaffolding of existential and dharmic and yogic to be like, okay, mortality, hello. Mm-hmm. Wow, great to reacquaint with you. And I'm trying to live so on fire and on purpose right now because I am alive to the fact that me having functioning cognition is a miracle. Like my ability to lift this leg now is a miracle. So the abundance of miracles that are now present for me are almost overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And I want to share that with folks because we choose to live in misery and not see the miracles that are playing.
What do you think your mind frame was like pre-stroke? Now that you're through it, you're through the stroke, you're in recovery, you have a shift toward gratitude to the blessings of our life, even moving limbs or having thoughts that are coherent. Seriously. And so did you find yourself taking some things for granted looking back? Did you have a reset in how you perceived life and yourself?
Yeah, I think to some extent it's unavoidable in the human condition, right? The one thing that we really struggle with, even those of us who are practiced, is impermanence, right? On both sides, right? So I was walking, then I wasn't, now I'm walking again. So it's like, well, you know what I mean? So just that whole thing in 6 months, right? So I've lived so many lifetimes in the past 180 days, it seems. And so to some extent, at a certain level of awareness, you do take things for granted. Mm-hmm. But that's why presence is so important, because the more present you are, you're like, yo, this could change like this. Mm-hmm. And it ain't. So give thanks, right? So when you are aware at how delightfully, mysteriously precarious this whole thing is, mm-hmm. like how your sense of order can shift because of a clot in the middle of your head, and all that has to go right in order for you to even be here. And then if something goes wrong, the resilience of this thing, if you feed it, hydrate it, give it rest, and give it space, all the miracle of all of it, the highs and the lows, the joys and the sorrows, I'm now present to. Mm-hmm. So I would say, I took it for granted because it was my norm. Yeah. But when the norm shifted and practice sustained me through that shift, I was like, whoa, yeah. Okay, mindfulness, right on. Thank you, present moment. It's just all of these different things that one of my teachers said the following to me. They were just like, and you thought you had it figured out, huh? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe, so it's just that it's when you get knocked off the stool and you're just like, wow, I'm still able to hold space for positive and negative when everything shifted. So maybe I even took practice for granted, right? So took practice for granted, took health for granted, took these things for granted because I was in a rhythm and a cadence. When that rhythm was disrupted, but the cadence stayed, that's when the awareness expanded.
Yeah, your practice was even more fully able to take hold because of the predicament you were in, actually. Mm-hmm. That's what I often like to let students or patients know, that you're not practicing for the good times in your life. You're actually practicing when hits the fan. And that's what's going to hold you and guide you through the thing and actually elevate you. Your life levels up because of the challenge.
It's so wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm present with that.
How has your teachings changed? What you offer now, how is it different than what you used to offer?
I would say so several ways. One is that one of the hallmarks of stroke recovery is that your energy is inconsistent. So I may be one day and the next day I may be like, I can't leave this bed, right? So I don't put a lot of, not that I did before, just to be clear, but even now, I said this to the lady at the post office. I just come back from the post office. I was just like, my teaching style is like a Black mother or a Black parent. Dinner is at 6. If you show up at 7 and ain't no food, it's because dinner is at 6. And so I put stuff out there. I'm not going to put a whole bunch of please come. You come or you don't. The wisdom I will offer is from the heart to the Sangha, if you are there or not. And so I think I'm a little bit more raw in that. Many teachers are like, please come, because numbers are a narcotic, and more in a capitalist understanding is better when you just need to impact one. Right. So luckily for me, I have lineage of teaching to the one, and if more come, that's great. But I would say my teaching is way more raw in that, I'm sorry I missed your class. Peace be upon you. Don't spare your words. I don't need that energy. With grace and gratitude, don't. Because if you would be there, if circumstance, don't do that. So I'm kind of vigilant about that. Just and that leads for more clarity. The people who are there, it is a moment for us And I think I've been able to, this is one thing that happened recently that kind of blew my mind. I kind of bust onto the scene in this teaching thing, never really planned it. There really wasn't much of a space for a big-bodied black dude in all the spaces. So dharmic spaces or yogic spaces or wisdom spaces, it just wasn't there. And the pandemic hit, everyone like started clutching their pearls, and I was like, "Whoo, hi, I'm coming in," right? And so basically barriers. So this hippie has an MBA, so barriers to entry went down. Faith rose, and I was like, and I'll take the mic. And then they killed George Floyd. I was like, oh, I'm gonna take this mic because nobody need to hear what you have to say, right? And so I've been that bold for a while. And now that boldness is just so focused on being authentic. I was at Kripalu recently, and a middle-aged white woman of means came to me and said, "Thank you so much for being so honest about your stroke and your health and your journey and your loving admonitions for us to get our stuff together. Like, don't pray it away. Take your butt to the doctor and see what's going on in the body. Like, respect the blessing of your health." That she was like, you being so loud about your healing has helped me be more loud about my multiple sclerosis diagnosis. And the energy that I have spent trying to suppress that and hide that, I no longer do, which has allowed me to be full. I didn't know how I was cheating my life by hiding this thing as opposed to embracing it as a part of my lived experience. When this middle-aged white woman of means was like, your teaching impacted me, I was like, whoa. It's just like, teaching has been more transcendent than some of my initial work, which was racially focused or racial justice focused. So me speaking, I speak to the heart of individuals as opposed to the skin color or those sorts of things. So that broadening has certainly manifested in the past 6 months.
Mm-hmm. That must be freeing for you too in some way.
It's moksha in many ways, right? It's liberty. It's just kind of like I can be, and it lands in the hearts it needs to land in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, these hard circumstances often blow up our own agendas that we clung to because we thought, hey, these are important and this is maybe my mission for right now. Mm-hmm. But then these circumstances, divorces or near-death experiences or accidents or the loss of people that we love, they can they can put us in a trance deeper, or they can wake us up. And our beliefs and our agendas tend to blow up with that. And that,
big time.
A lot of freedom, actually.
Big time. And it's especially going back to what we were talking about earlier, where when the doctor was like, "Mr. Hubbard, you've had a stroke," I asked my girlfriend to go get one of my sound bowls. And immediately, once the doctor left, I was like, immediately, because I knew neurologically that these waves calm my mind, and I had an acute injury. This thing needs to be calmed in all ways, energetically, but also mechanically. And it created a space of peace in critical care unit. I mean, because the interesting thing about my stroke is that I was in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm from Maryland. I was hundreds of miles away from home. A black dude in South Carolina who just had a stroke on Obamacare. There's so much that could go wrong there. And so I just had to be so in touch with faith that it just allowed for me to play and be peaceful, so much so that the nurses kept checking on me. And I was just like, y'all were just, the room is so peaceful that my healing is ministering to you. I didn't notice that because I was just doing what I needed to do for me. But then I noticed how outside of room 335, there was a whole bunch of beep, beep, this other stuff. But the second they crossed the threshold into my room, the work that I was doing meditatively, spiritual, just like to hold space for this ridiculously tectonic diagnosis that I just received, that work made space for all people. And then and, the neurologists are being like, so tell me why you're playing this. So I'm having conversations while I can't walk, just like blah, 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 like with these people. And then that's when it kind of showed me that me being free to practice and be is helping them be.
Yeah.
Curious.
Authenticity heals.
Right.
Authenticity heals and empowers, I would say.
That blew my mind.
We need more people being ourselves. I think that's what we've been missing so much, especially in the West, when we're so driven to succeed through production or accumulation. We forget that actually, I think succeeding is becoming the best of ourselves, living up to our potential, but also just being who we're meant to be. Imagine a world of people walking around really being themselves, ourselves. That's the
medicine.
That's the medicine. Yeah.
Red Angel talks a lot about that these days. Like, they've kind of shifted their focus in terms of just like, I'm trying to get you to be you.
Yeah.
Unabashed, unapologetic, because that creates the permission structure for other people to experiment with their liberation. And when I heard her say that, I was just like, yes. Yeah. It's just like, I'm there. And so that's why, I've been playing these gongs everywhere. I've been doing, like, having conversations everywhere because I talk about my stroke everywhere. Why? Because this is Alan Finger's one of my teachers. And after I had the stroke, I reached out to him and was just like, teach, what do I chant to help here? And he was like, you can chant this. And unless and until you love your injury, you'll never heal from it. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. So at that point, I fell in love with my stroke.
Yeah, let's talk more about that, because as a psychologist and Buddhist teacher, so many people are coming to me going, hey, I don't like what I'm experiencing. What can I do to not have it? And I'm like, so you're going to hate the thing you want away from you, like that.
That doesn't work, right?
But people don't know that. I'm like, you actually, even someone who attempted suicide and his son found him, and there's all this terrible emotional drama for the family. I'm like, if you can end up loving that circumstance, you're going to find freedom that and healing you never had. And he was so angry at the beginning, like, you mean I'm supposed to love that I did that? I'm like, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
You hated yourself into doing it. You're not going to hate yourself.
You got to love yourself out of it.
So talk about loving your stroke so that our audience has a sense of even the worst things that happen to us, if we learn to love them, even we don't like them. I'm not saying we're supposed to like those things.
Yeah, I'm not like, I wish that happened sooner.
Totally. That's not what I mean. But that we actually use love and acceptance as medicine.
Yeah.
To heal.
I mean, so I love this conversation, right? I love the thread that we're weaving here. We have all been deluded and deceived into a notion of reality that the pursuit of happiness is the end all and be all. When in fact, all of life matters, the joys, the sorrows, the ups, the downs. Like, I'm of the belief ecumenically, but also spiritually in all of my practices, that everything that happens to you is of value and is meant for your education, inspiration, and liberation. So two things I'll say, one with the stroke and one is racism that I had to learn how to love. The stroke, I learned to love because it happened and I can't hide that. And the energy that I would spend hiding that could be used to heal and to create understandings of what I need to do now. And one of the things on day 2 of the event, I looked my girlfriend in the eyes because she was there with me for the entire time, bless her spirit. And I was just like, I am not getting on this roller coaster. You know what I mean? I'm not getting on the ups and downs. I will make a vow to you, the ancestors, and all of my teachers. Like, I will view this as, how is this happening for me? As opposed to, why is this happening to me? I speak that into existence because that frame is the only way I can make sense of this. And that commitment from day 2, I promise you, and I don't understand how. I guess I'll understand on the other side of this meat suit when I return to infinite consciousness and awareness. But I can't imagine what that opened up for me. Mm-hmm. You know, in my PT, you know, when they were giving me these ridiculous things to do, or I'm having these blistering cramps, like and you can't walk. Then you get these shooting nerve flares at night. They wake you up. And what's happening is like the brain is the brain is trying to refire from the middle of your head down to your toe. I'm 6'3", so that's a very long way. So I could view that or the hives that I had when everything was like coalescing at the same time. So when the body stopped being in shock, and like all of the medicines and cortisol and all that, when all that started to hit and I could not move, right? Mm-hmm. I learned about my skin. I learned about hydration. So keeping that frame of how is this happening for me, I learned so much about diet and metabolism and how you eat. And all of these things that has informed my teaching, has informed my advocacy, has informed just how I move through the world. So learning to love the stroke and seeing it as a teacher, you know, as my great teacher, has opened up all of this wisdom. And similarly, when I learned to love racism, it gave me a permission to not be held by it. Mm. So in some of my activist work, I would tell like some of the younger folks, I say kids, that's a bit pejorative, but people younger than me, I would be like, yo, let their white supremacy be to your advantage. And like, what do you mean? I was like, if they think you're dumb, let them think it. So me learning to love racism would be just like, okay, cool. You think I'm dumb. Yeah, while that is somewhat enraging, I'm going to use your ignorance to my advantage and move the cause of justice, not only forward for me, but for all beings, right? So when you embrace something that you don't like, it softens your edges and it awakens not only curiosity, but some of the biggest miracles come from the things that you don't even know. Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate that deeply. I think so many people meet other people's troubles with their own trouble, and then the trouble exacerbates and becomes worse. So greeting someone's racism or oppressive ideologies and behaviors with anger and hatred and fighting just increases fighting and hatred and ignorance. Mm-hmm. So what if we let people's trouble be their own troubles and we use our energy for something that's uplifting, leveling up, is what I'm hearing from you.
Totally. And it becomes fun.
Say more about that.
In the racist context, it has allowed me to be the spiritual entrepreneur that I've become. Right? Because I'm like, yo, y'all been telling me for years what I can't do, and I've now artfully weaved that into a spiritual LLC that uses like gongs and wisdom talk to liberate people from suffering. Thank you, racism. Right? Shout out to racism because you made me wily. Mm-hmm. You know, racism forced me deep into my spiritual practice because I was just like, this ain't making no sense. That's where my ancestors' practice came from. They're like, yeah, we know it doesn't make sense. You gonna listen to us now? Okay. You know, so it got me, racism, in my experience with it, connected me to my ancestors.
Can you link us? Show us how that links and then what you learned from them.
Yeah, so the fact that I have the problems that I have are because they were prayed for. I come from a lineage of people that couldn't vote, you know, by societal design. Like, I now teach members of Congress and people at the Democratic National Committee meditation, right? I'm the healthcare advisor for Nancy Pelosi, right? You know, all from a lineage of people that couldn't vote. And so my success is the answer to their prayer. It's a dance, right? So the things that open up, it ain't me that's doing it. They're pathways that have been prayed for, that I, in faith and stepping fully into my authenticity, like we were talking about earlier, can blaze these trails, which as a conduit between past and the future, it's not about ego. It's about like widening opportunity and liberation for all beings, right? The ancestors allow me to do that. If I had $1 for every crow I see per day, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like that. Okay, y'all got me, right? I have a crow altar right here, which you could see it. And in the middle of it, it says, I'm Black and protected. You know, so, but it's a color of change button from politics, right? But it's like all of that, like, the connection of spiritual liberation of my ancestors has led to my actual liberation in this oppressive system. And so the connection that I have drawn is that as I liberate myself on the pathway that they liberate themselves, more people get free. I learned that from my ancestor practice.
So I love how embodied this is. This is my goal as a host, as a co-host, is to bring people's teachings into life for the audience who are listening. So it's not just words. It's like someone listening going, oh, I actually want to start doing some of that for myself. Yeah. We all have ancestors. We all have some indigeneity somewhere back on Earth. We're connected to Earth and to the place and to animals and to practices. So is this a part of what you teach people? Are you helping them connect, whether they're from whatever culture or country they're from? Is that an active part, or is that something that just guides you?
It's more personal. Yeah. And if people ask about it, I talk about it. Right. My main teaching practice roots in who are you? Tell me who you are. Show me who you are. Then show everybody else. Right. Because that radical authenticity creates, like we were talking about earlier, creates permission structures for other aspects of human thriving and liberation. The things that I've learned along the way or have picked up from my teachers or my ancestors, I will talk about them when I'm doing stuff. But I don't hold like, hey, this is how to build an ancestor practice. I talk about my ancestors, and then people ask, what does that mean? Then I'll talk about it. If they want to learn more, I will ask me any question, I'll help. But that's not a formal part of what I offer. No.
Understand. Yeah. And all of these practices don't have to be all of our practices. I think that's, a lot of people are like, well, there's so many things I should choose. Well, let your soul choose what really works for your body, mind, organism. So in your path, how did you find the Dharma yogic teachings? How did you find the gongs behind you? How were you called to those things?
Yeah, I know, right? So I think this is another reason why I've kind of bust onto the scene as a teacher, because like I'm honest about my roots. Like I did not start practicing yoga or dharmic wisdom for enlightenment. I started practicing to not call my boss. Like I was in a passive aggressive, horrific nonprofit job situation in Denver, Colorado, where it was a bait and switch. They hired me for one thing. I get out there on day 6. I'm in this staff meeting. They feel like this woman said, I feel undermined by you. I'm like, oh my God. And so it went from awesome to awful on day 6. And I was in Denver, Colorado, luckily. And by God's grace and the favor of the ancestors, I started practicing asana like 40 days prior. And so Denver has and had a very vibrant yoga scene. And so on day 6, I walk into this place called Kindness Yoga in Denver, Colorado. And they were like, oh, welcome. You know, there's a $30 special, unlimited. I had $100 in my pocket because that's how we roll in Baltimore. You know what I'm saying? I was just like, yo, here. What'll 100 get me? I'm going to be here a lot. My job totally sucks. And I was there twice a day, sunrise, sunset. Like I was in that dojo, like all the time. what I did not know, and now know upon reflection, I knew as I was going through it because I've had the opportunity to read my journal entries from that time. And what was happening is, as the stuff, I mean, they made me sign, they tried to get me to sign these letters like, you were drunk at a work function. I was not. And this is coercion, you racist, you know what I mean? So all this stuff was going on. I remember writing, while I am heartbroken, I feel sorrier for them, because what are you going through to treat me this way? Mm-hmm. I remember when I read that, I didn't know I was writing that. So when I had the benefit of reading that like 2 years ago, I was like, whoa, like this yoga stuff was messing with you in ways that you didn't even know. You thought you was just burning off some stress. You didn't know you were liberating your entire consciousness, huh? Right? So that's how it started. They fired me via text message 10 months into the gig. I told you the job sucked, like the indignity of a text message, whatever. And then they asked me for an exit interview. And I was like, this is where I'm glad Southern Roots and Yogic and Dharmic Grace showed up at the same time, because I was like, y'all know good and hell well, an exit interview is probably not in the best interest of all of our time, right? You know what I mean? Like, we can just part ways. That's cool. I was like, but I do want to thank you. And they're like, for what? Because that's what silky white folks do. I was like, I want to thank you for how poorly you treated me, because you gave me the wisdom to navigate adversity with grace. Mm-hmm. And I called my family afterwards. I was like, this yoga and meditation stuff is buck wild, because how do I go in 10 months from wanting to call them, like do my best Richard Pryor impersonation on them, calling them all sorts of like, how do I go from that to thank you for the adversity? Like, you have given me wisdom. Like, what? So at that point, I was like, I'm all in.
Yeah, because you were sincere too. It wasn't just you were doing the yogic thing or how we're supposed to be talking.
Yeah.
You actually had an internal shift, understanding, hey, grace and kindness are the way to go, even when I want to be like, F you guys.
Yo.
That's also true. We get to feel that. I have MFers in me all the time. Like those, I feel it and I want to say it, but also it's just not useful or skillful, and it doesn't help anything unless you're joking with first responders. Then there's a lot of
F-bombs. Yeah, for sure.
But, so I want you to share with the audience like that it was a sincere shift in you. What do you think it was? I know it's not just the postures. I know it's not just deep breathing. What do you think it was that liberated and opened you?
Yeah, and then from there I'll transition to the gongs too, right? So like what meditation or asana or nada yoga, which is the yoga of sound, Kriya yoga, more of a subtle practice, what all of these practices offer is space to process. It offers you to a connection to something bigger than you, bigger than a yoga mat. Right? We derive from the same energy that knows when the sun rises and sets, right? You know what I mean? So it connects you to that. And like that connection, and you may not even be aware of it at first, because I surely wasn't. But like that connection allowed me to be like, yeah, this job totally sucks. And I wonder what they must be going through to be treated where does that come from? It comes from me being in these things, breathing deeply, finding peace afterwards, subtly shedding psychic weight, not knowing that that's happening. I mean, I do teach that now to folks. I'm just like, so you think you're just getting a workout. We're shedding psychic weight. You know what I mean? Like the things that are wearing you down subconsciously, I'm going in there and we're eviscerating that. Okay. Right. So I now know what that's about, because I subconsciously did it. And in retrospect, it can retrofit. So it gives you space. Mm-hmm. When I, a continuation from that story, get fired via text message, join the Bernie Sanders campaign, and one of the key producers on the road that helps architect the brand, you know what I mean, in 2016, ride it from October to the convention. Like I was the person that helped couple the Bernie Sanders experience to the DNC in 2016, which was mission impossible. But thank you, yogic wisdom and dharmic grace, And when Trump wins in 2016, I didn't go to any parties because I just had a terrible feeling in my stomach for 2 weeks before the election. I was like, oh God, this sucks. And people like, you're negative. I was like, my gut is churning and I am a peaceful dude. Like something ain't right. So when the election went the way that it did, I went into silence and, came out of silence and was like, I gotta go home and be home, be in Washington D.C. and fight. And so I joined Move On. So I go from Bernie campaign into Move On, where I was the D.C. director for Move On during the Trump resistance years. So we fought back the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. We impeached the guy. I'm in the middle of all of that. And then Biden-Harris win in 2020 and family. The same thing that was churning in 2016 basically was like, sit down, leave. Right? You have done your work here. So when they won, I quit Move On. I now view that as like spiritual admonition because they gave me a false choice. They were just like, you can either help run Washington or do online programming. I was like, I just did both excellently. You trying to take it away? Nah, it's a false choice. Like, do you know who you're talking to? Right? So I was like, okay, the real choice is whether or not I want to kick it with you anymore. And given your vibration that you're on now, I don't want to. I'm out. So I took my severance and bought like 50 of these singing bowls here. So I just went nuts. Took my severance and bought a whole bunch of Tibetan antique bowls and sat in darkness for a couple months because it's 21. It's still the pandemic, right? So we're all separated from each other. So in darkness with bowls, I would just be like, hours by myself, and this medicine has turned down all of the cacophony that accumulated during the resistance. And so I was like, yo, I feel amazing. Like every time I play this for myself. And so damn yogic dharmic practice, I was like, I must use this to help others. Right? So I was like, yo, everyone's stuck at their house freaking out. I'm going to play for folks. And so it just started sitting. The tag that I came up with was pure sound to ground. You know what I mean? And so I started playing online for folks. And now I play for people. And as I've gotten deeper into the history of the bowls, but also just the practice of sound, it is a disruptor that points to silence. Like silence is the language of God. Mm-hmm. Silence is how the infinite communicates to the finite. And like once I got into all of that, I was just like, okay, I'm buying all these sounds and I'm going to practice. And then the last thing I'll say in terms of like how I super got hooked is I was playing for a group of teachers and there was an indigenous elder on the call. And the indigenous elder was, your sound is as if you are praying to all the dimensions in loving kindness. I was like, what? And if that's what's coming through, then you're seeing what is playing through me. So that's when I really got it. I was like, if this is about the liberation of all beings in all realms, and they were like, as you play, every sound that you hear, wish that dimension kindness. I was like, I'm there.
What about that so appealing to you?
Because they're unseen realms, right? The visual and auditory spectrum that we have is limited. So suffering, but also liberation is limitless. So, and I know from sound that I played at a place not that far from here on this past Friday, And this dude, well, his girlfriend brought him, and he was super skeptical, but he was like, man, you played that stuff, and I felt it all over my body in different ways. So, like, when you had all the gongs and bowls going, I felt like I was in, like, Magic the Gathering, you know what I mean? Just, like, everything was stimulated, liberated, and cleared. I was like, and that is your birthright. Like, we are meant to be that connected and use that connection in service to the healing of other beings.
Mm-hmm. Give the people listening a sense of how powerful sound can be for shaking things up in the body that need shaken up. I want to know, again, this is practical. The vibrations do something at cellular levels. They do it throughout our tissues.
It's neurological. Yeah. When I was talking to the neurologist in my stroke recovery, we were talking science.
Mm-hmm. It's grounded. I mean, it's not, science is one language, spirituality is another language, and I think they merge and they blend.
That's what I mean.
It's really healthy to have kind of a skepticism also. But, you know, I was thinking about the combat vets I work with TBI from blasts. They don't even have to be very close to the blast to have the wave of the blast penetrate and impact the brain itself, the tissues. It's functioning. So this is doing the same, but on a different vibration that's healing rather than disruptive.
Absolutely. And so basically, and I'll play some stuff for you because I got my good mic set up. And when we live in a realm where the waves are short and la 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 rah, 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 that's not the rhythm that the brain and your neurology is designed for. Right? We are designed for spaciousness, rest, and those sorts of things. So fight or flight is a constricting symptom of the way that our society has been constructed. And, you know, when I'll play this one gong, it's called Home, because it's the home gong for this studio. And when I got out of intensive care from all my stroke stuff, man, I didn't know necessarily what I was holding on to, right? But I played this sound. And immediately started crying. Right? That vibration kicked open the floodgates of the stress that I'd been holding on to from my near-death experience, right? And so once that happened, I just played. And let that just bathe over me. So much so that I had the best night of sleep afterwards. Right? And, you know, if you're watching this on video, you see me walking around my studio. I couldn't walk 5 months ago at all. And so me sitting with these vibrations in a calm state, I would sit here and I would make fun of myself because I used to have pretty decent rhythm because I'm a percussionist. My left foot, I couldn't move it, right? So I would sit here and play gongs, but also pat my foot awkwardly to get into a fluid state. Now I can pat like old times. So I have learned viscerally, unexpectedly, how these vibrations and these gongs specifically can manifest healing in a radical way. And if it's radical, I'm typically into it. So
yeah, you do it if it's radical. I could tell that. There's that. Yeah. And that's you. We wouldn't want it any other way. None of us. We're I don't want it to be, but we're really close to the edge of our interview. I mean, this is just awesome. Two dudes being ourselves together, talking about things that we think are important for everyone's well-being. Do you have one just concise message for everyone watching? What you wish most for them?
My wish for all beings is that we remember that our nervous system is sacred. It is the one thing that connects us and connects us to other people. right? So anything you can do to fortify, nourish, rest, and relax your nervous system and stay there. So your ability to re-regulate your nervous system is a gift to yourself and to other people.
Mm. Mm. Thank you for that. Just sitting with it. And how can people find you?
Active Peace Yoga is the easiest place to find me. Reggie Global on the socials. Like social media, I can't stand it, but I'm great at it. So like, I use it as a tool for liberation and information. So you can find me there. And I'm teaching more now that my health is returning. Mm-hmm. So virtual and in person, keep a lookout.
Well, thank you so much, Reggie. It was a deep pleasure to be with you today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on the summit.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.